We're very fortunate today to have John Parsons with us from Fraser Coast Microbats. John is, in fact, there's a bit of a funny story. I came back to work on the 4th of January and found a pile of bat boxes being delivered. and then said, oh, by the way, we're doing bats. So, and this is the man who brought us the bat boxes.
Yes.
And poles to mount them on, and screws to attach them with.
Yes.
And bat detectors, and bat clickers, and John is like a freight train arriving on platform. Yes. With everything in tow, and he's got an urgency about him for microbats, which I think is very valid, given the environmental importance and ecology of our landscapes. Just by way of a bit of background, which I learned this morning, John started his career as a fireman. And thank you very much. Sorry. You can also turn your cell phone off, everybody. And his first posting in Australia was in Sydney, managing fire brigades on the airport, at the airport, which obviously airports have a very big environmental impact, and they also have a lot of environmental involvement as a result, especially when it comes to things like bird strikes. Yeah. So John worked his career in that field, but got very involved and was always very interested in wildlife. And so when he arrived in Australia and saw the bush here, it pushed all the buttons.
It did.
The whole board came alive.
Fascinating. Very different to Europe.
Yes. Yeah. So after the talk, if you've got some time to hear John's story, it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. But he's responsible for setting up some of the first bat counts that Queensland ever did, and is still involved, and hence is here with a mission. So let's hear from John.
All right. Thank you, Ziggy. No problem. Good morning, everybody. Look, I must say thank you to Ziggy and to Ben for allowing me to come and talk to you guys. Most people don't know microbats, most people don't understand them. As soon as you mention them, ooh, they're going to poison me, they're going to kill me, they're going to eat me, they're going to do all sorts of wonderful things that never ever happen. Worst thing that ever happened to microbats and megabats was Dracula. We got a bad name from Dracula, and it's still there. I've been doing this now for just on 22, 23 years with the megabats and microbats. And we used to get punched out and kicked, and they were going to rape my wife and kill me, and they were going to do all sorts, and we got the police involved, and they were going to burn forests and get rid of everything. And today's a different story, and that different story is you guys. You want to sit and listen, and you want to know more about what the bats do and what they don't do. And hopefully I can transform that today. But what I'm going to do today is something different. Is I'm not going to teach you anything. What I'm going to do is show you what we've done, and I'm going to, as we go through, I'm going to ask questions. And most of it I'll give you 5 years to answer the question, because the answer we don't know, and it's people like yourselves that can probably answer it. So maybe you can, maybe you can't. We're still at the very young stage of this. The universities throughout Australia are just starting to get up and running. There's a few ecology students coming around the place. So I'm probably Mr. Knowledge, sort of like from here to, I don't know, probably Rockhampton or something like that. There is a lady up in Cairns, it's Marie Kerr, that's Professor Marie Kerr. She lectures at Melbourne University, and then she does New South Wales, Queensland, and then she lectures up there. I was with her a few months ago, and she's a game girl. She's got huge amounts of knowledge, so if you're ever up in Cairns, go up to Carandra, go up there, you'll see the big signs up there for the bat place up there. Just knock on the door, introduce yourself, and say hello to Marie. All right, any questions? Does anybody want to ask me a question of any sort? No? Okay, questions you can ask whenever. If you've got a question, just pop your hand up. Let me sort of go through it, and I'll come back to you. Now, we should get something if we push that. No. No. Now, which one? Ziggy?
It should be an error. It probably has gone in the
Oh, there we go. You're a fucking genius.
Oh, is it?
What? I know.
about this one?
No, don't touch that.
Here we go.
Yeah, it's on that.
It's
Arrow.
there.
Yeah, okay.
All right. All right. Thank you, Ziggy. All right, first thing we do, what is a bat? A bat is a mammal. And we all basically know what a mammal is, isn't it? It's animals that have live babies. So the microbat is probably unique within that system. And if you have a look up here, they're 22% of the world's mammals, which means they're a bigger species than what we are. Throughout the world, we have 1,240 species. In Australia, we have 78. So if we look at that figure, it says we don't have more than 1/3 of the world's population. So there is diversity within the microbats, which is massive. Let's have a look at the sizes. There's the little one. It's the smallest one that we have. It's smaller than what the nail on my little finger. It's about that thing. Most people think it's a fly and they go, bloody things. Right? Because they don't know. They're not here in Australia, they're in Malaysia. The biggest one we have, which doesn't quite show up there, is the golden crown. He's about two metres. He's that big. So again, he's up in Malaysia, he's in Malaysia and South Africa, and your bumblebee is in South Africa as well. Where do you find them? That's where you find them, everywhere in the world. So it doesn't matter where you go, you're going to find a microbat of some description. If you don't find him the particular time that you're looking for him, give it 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks and you'll probably find that it will be there. One of the big things that we have is blind as a bat. It's an old wives' tale, it's not particularly correct, and the microbat, his eyesight is identical to ours. The megabat, he has prisms, he's got 3, one on the left, one in the middle and one on the right. That's why when he flies, he flies on a high moon and there's sufficient light for him to bring that in and have a look and see what's coming along on the ground. But they've got smart. They're now following street lights to wherever it is that they're going to of a night time. All right, that's a little bit of a silly one. It does happen if we go out and we take ladies with us. We normally say wear a hat of some description. We wear hard hats for various reasons. The bat can get caught in your hair. Men mainly have got short hair. There are the odd few. Some don't have any at all, so they're the fortunate ones like me. They reckon that my brains are that big, it's pushing the hairs out. So, you know, that's the... So, any questions on that? No, you're all right. The only other one that we've got is echolocation. We'll come into that at a later date. All right? All right, the morphology of the microbat. All right, mammal. Have a close look at it. Put your arm out, put your fingers out wide. Have a membrane that goes from there to there. You're a bat. You're identical in every shape and form. There they are, look, the wrist, the radio, the elbow, the ears. The easiest way to tell the megabat from the microbat is the microbat has got a tail. The megabat has not got a tail. So if you pick up a baby, that's the easiest way that you can tell the difference between them. All right? Your toes are the same look. Your toe is slightly different, but everything else, and the membranes within here, if they tear them, they're normally within 3 or 4 days, and they'll pick that back up. Okay, insectivore. It's a lovely word. Here it is, look. These are 78 species which are in Australia. And this is how they get their food. They'll fly up to, they'll fly as fast as 20 kilometres an hour, and they'll catch your moth, and they'll catch him through echolocation. As I say, we'll go into that a little bit more at a later date. But look at the wingspan, look at the blood thing. See how intricate it is? So any one of those that gets ripped or torn, within 2 or 3 days it's back to where it should be again. Alright? So, right up the top, look, that's what they'll eat. So it doesn't matter what it is. Anything that moves of night, they'll eat it. So your fruit flies, your cockroaches, any of your moths and your Jiminy crickets, they'll eat little mice, they'll eat little birds. Anything that moves, anything which is meat, they will get stuck into and have a good time. There's a couple more, look. So these are your earwigs, there's another little cricket that's over here. But take note of the different ears. I'll go into that later. Okay. Fish eater. Here he is, the Moiitis. That's the Gombossi. I don't know if you've got them in your dams here. They're in most places. You know the little fish you see if you drop something in the lake. All these little fish come in and they grab it. They're fantastic today because they'll clean the lake. They're not native. They're South African. So they were introduced here some 100 years ago, purely and solely to eat them. So anything that falls into a lake, these little fish will go along and they'll clean it and they'll eat it. The Moiitis, he's the fish eater. He likes to eat that. So if we have a look at him, and what he does is he'll Google half a dozen of his mates. They'll spread out across the lake. They'll go down. They'll turn their feet upside down, and they've got sharp claws. They'll catch the fish. They'll stop on the other side. They'll eat them. They'll fly back, and they'll do it probably 3 or 4 times a night. Excuse me. Until such time as they've had sufficient. Okay. We're still on meat eaters. They're still insectivore, although they're going into flowers. See what we've got? Insectivore. Insectivore. So if we get a fly that goes into the flower, they'll go into the flower for it. And by doing that, they then start a pollination. And there's a couple more. So let's have a quick look at pollination. How do we get pollination? We get it from trees and shrubs and grasses, don't we? And we need rain to get that. So if we don't get a great deal of rain, we're not going to get too much pollen. So most of these, as you'll see with these, are of a cactus type and they hold their own moisture for quite a long time. So your fly will go in there, and the same with this guy over here. The fly will go in there, and he'll go in there and he'll go after it. And when he comes out, there's your pollination. So this is the world's greatest pollinators. They pollinate more in one night than a bee will do in a year. So we have to look after these guys. The bees in all sorts of troubles, and so is the microbat. But between the two, if we can get the two going again and get them back where they should be, we should be very successful in Australia, and that's where you guys can come in and help. All right, let's have a look at a couple of figures here. Here's your main figure. Look, they've been around for 50 million years. So they're not new to anything. They've been here. There's your pollination. Look, they'll pollinate per night over 700 different flowers, shrubs and grasses. Incredible, isn't it? So that's how useful that they are to the man on the land. In America, the American farmer saves $23 billion a year from the microbat. That means that he doesn't have to spray. So that's where we are today. That's where we're calling these now biological control. So the more microbats that we have that will eat the bugs and the biters, the less spray that the man in the land is getting. We had massive problems, and you had that here in Ipswich on the last floods, which we hadn't had for 10 or 20 years. And most people have got a garden, and in that garden they've got lots of flowers and they get bugs. So instead of doing the biological control on the plants, they get the can spray from Bunnings. So we get out and we spray everything, we get rid of the bugs. Then the rain came along and it washed all of that down into flooded areas. And as the water was receding, your Ipswich Water or your council, they had numerous problems further down with poisoned water that was killing whatever was going past it. A lot of your snakes and your lizards and kangaroos were drinking it because they get very sick. Then it leaves them open to the foxes and the wolves and everything else. So that's where your biological control comes in. So by spraying these guys are going to get sick, and that's what we don't want. All right, insectivore and nectivore. These are the two. Insectivore. Look how stubby nose he is, and he's got short ears, and he's going into the flower. And see the stamen, look? It's picking up there, and that's picking up the pollen. So he's doing two jobs. He's going to eat the bugs, and he's going to pollinate at the same time. This is your nectivore. We have two or three, they're not here, they're further up north. Go up probably just before Cairns, you'll get a couple. But there's his tongue, look. He feeds purely and solely on nectar, nothing else. That's all he will survive on. But look at the stamen. These are pollination. So again, he's doing two jobs. He's feeding himself and he's pollinating at the same time. So he'll go from flower to flower. So when we look across the board again at the different pollination, what flowers pollinates after night? Almost everything. All of your hardwood forests, your eucalypts, your gums, all of your tropical fruits, they all flower after midnight. Your cactus, your succulents, and most of the people have got them in their gardens, they all flower after midnight. All of your orchids, you talk to an orchid man, he gets up at 2 o'clock in the morning and goes and does pollination with male and female flowers. These guys will do it for you. So that's where you guys need this in your forest, because of your orchids that you've got. These are endangered. And these, everything that we have, this is an American photo actually, but there's everything in there that we've got. So there's your bats, look, and there's all your butterflies and your birds and everything else. It's all there. So we have the same thing. We call them something different. So they're all endangered. So where is the chain of pollination? Let's have a look at the chain here. So the first one is your birds and your bugs. They do most of your pollination. Okay. Your second one is the microbat. The third one is the wind. The second one is the rain and the dew. And the third one are your bees. Didn't know that, did you? Most people don't. They think that the bee is the only. So how can we help these things? Right? How can we do something which is going to be bat friendly for us? So there's just a few flowers that you can go out and you can buy from your local garden. Is what we would like to see, which I'll follow that on actually in a minute. I won't go on that. So how do we help with the pollination? These are pollination. So there's the ones that if you've got house plants and you've got bugs and biters coming in your house, you can put these plants in and they'll keep your bugs away. So you don't have to spray. So all your big farmyards and people that have got big greenhouses and things, they can plant these by the door or close to the door or close to the windows, and they can do the same job. So it's a cost recovery to them. There's all the things that will help, and most of them we spray because we don't like them. So what have we got to do today? We're going to start liking them. If you leave them alone, they won't like you. All right, so they're good. They're all good for us. And plus, that's just a few. There's about another dozen of those, which will do the same thing. Predators. What are their predators? You'll see at the top there, look, there's your predators. And the biggest one we've had in the last 2 years is the bushfires. Melbourne University have got a massive program going down there on the bushfires, and we don't know, we do not have any ideas what happens when the bushfire has gone through. So they're having a look at that now to see what the regrowth is, see what the animals are. In some areas, there's over 95% of the animals which were there are not there anymore, they've been burnt. So what is the recovery going to be with that? Is there going to be a recovery? They have 1,000 questions with absolutely no answers. We've got something similar here, a little bit further up. I don't think you guys got too many fires, did you?
Yeah.
You got a bit, did you?
Yeah, some.
Yeah. We got quite a lot up at some of the areas up there. So that was one of our biggest. And the other ones that is not on there is crocodiles. They love bats. Yeah, you might think it's unusual that a crocodile will eat a bat, but he does. And what happens is that I'll show you later, the bats, and we don't quite know why, bats come down to drink, but only very, very small amounts of a night. So you may have 1,000 bats that are going to flow in, but only maybe 2 or 3 drink. And we don't quite know why that is. There's a senior scientist in Brisbane, he's been trying to find that out for a couple of years and he's still no better off. We still don't know. So, because their food chain is liquid. So why would they want to drink? We don't know. We're not too sure about that. All right? So we're trying to. There we are. All right. Now, I put this one in. It's your ticks. And you don't get them often, but you will get them. And if you guys are going to go into bats and you do pick one up off the floor, just check to make sure that you haven't got any. It's what happens, especially with the myoitis. He will sit on the ground and he will get on the low areas of the mango tree, and you'll with the branches coming over, the ticks will actually get in underneath. And then when the bat goes to get the fruit, he can pick up, and then after a couple of years, he's going to get something like that. So that can be dangerous to you, and it will kill the bat. All right, so be careful. So your carers are the ones that, the biggest thing for that. But there's another one. He's got the bat. Look, so that's another predator of him. It's a shame. That's Mother Nature. All right, we can't help that. All right. So there's some indifferences. There's an eastern bentwing. He's got himself a frog. So again, he'll eat anything of the night. Green frogs are more susceptible to these guys because if you know the feeding chain of the green frog is mosquitoes, and he's down there on the ground. The feeding chain for the microbat, his main food is the same thing, on the ground. So when the two of them meet, one is going to come and take the other. So it's quite common that we get it. I had one last year, a lady from Riverheads. She went out to the post box, and there's the frog that actually got the microbat. So they both eat mosquitoes. So that's your food chain. There's the same thing again. You guys, I think you've got a few caves and things like that here. You'll normally get that in the caves. You'll get the pythons and whatever. You will sit on the entrance of the cave, and when they fly out, they'll try and grab them. And it's quite common that they do that. All right. Habitat. Where do they live? They live in walls. Look, this is probably one of the most common in the old buildings. Can anybody see? Can you see anything in there? There they are. Look. Right. So next time you're passing a brick wall, have a look. You never know. You may find something. There's some more. These are your habitat. There's a man-made box. Look, and that's where you'll see that they fit. It's a shame that we can't get that in. No. There's a tree hollow that they'll get in, but you'll only get probably 1, 2 or 3 in the tree hollows because most of the Australian trees don't make good nests for them, and it's difficult for them to go in. One of the great places where they will live is in the old trees. Anything over 100 years. Anybody know this guy? He's local. Ted Fenson, you know Ted? Oh. No? Yeah, Ted Fenson is it. They were going to bulldoze that, council. And Ted stamped the foot and said, no, you're not. Leave it alone. So they did. It's now a parkway all the way around it. He's down at Maroochydore. How could you do that, eh? And that's it. That's another one. That's up in Cairns. And same thing. So there's a few holes, but you'll find that they're further up. That's probably 1,000 years old. So you'll get them. You know, you'll get them in. You'll get them in. The older the tree, the more chance you've got of getting them. That's the oldest tree in the world. It's out in Madagascar. They estimate it to be about 2,000 years old. There's thousands of microbats that they get in the little crevices all in through here. And the microbat is the only one that actually pollinates the brachycriton. So if you're familiar with it, have you got brachy's here? No? No, you've got the Andersonia or the brachycriton?
Brachycriton.
You've got the brachy, yeah. You'll find that they absolutely love it. So this is that's another one in Cairns, and they're all in the crevices. But the breeding is very limited. For the simple reason is that the female cannot get privacy, she hasn't got security. And she's like the emu, that if she can't get what she wants and it's not safe enough, she won't breed. And this has been the major problem that we have today, is that instead of the population going up, they're going down. So we're losing, on an annual basis, we lose about 1%, just as a natural. The major problem is that with knocking the trees down, if the female goes across the road to find another roost, all the good roosts have been taken, so she'll just find somewhere, nice little hole, she'll sit in that, but she won't breed. So if we looked at 1,000 microbats over 5 years that don't breed, we've just lost 20,000. So that's where we are today. So that's where we come in with the microbat boxes to support that. All right. Microbat boxes. They replace the trees. We call this an artificial forest. So that's just, you've got your tubes in your boxes, and it's what we did. That's one end of the paddock there with lots of trees and what have you. And 200 years ago, there was trees all the way through here, going up and hooking up to that one. So it's what we did, we put all these boxes in. We were there last week, and that one up there has got microbats in. It's only 2 years old. So we had 2 microbats in that pole up there. So we were very happy with that, very happy. So this is a nut farm. It's in Maryborough. So we have 2. We've got Maryborough Nut Farm and one at Gympie. Okay. This is a sugar farm. Same thing. Artificial forest. 100 microbat boxes. We thought that this one was going to take the cake. We thought that being down there next to the original forest, we would get microbats in there within a couple of years. We were wrong. Totally wrong. These here, the opposite end to that, you can see the lake there. That lake carries on there, goes for about 200 metres. It's the water course for the farmer for his sugar. Look, that one there has got 2 microbats in it. He's out in the middle of nowhere. We never even thought they'd even look at that. We didn't know. This one, it's now 4 years old. So the farmer from that, we've encouraged quite a number of microbats to come to this area. They use most of these. They use them on a probably 2 or 3 monthly basis, but they don't stay because the food chain in this area is very poor. So they'll stay here, whatever the food chain is in that particular area. They'll stay there for 1 or 2 or 3 weeks, and then they'll move and they'll go somewhere else where the food chain is. So they'll take a 50 or 60 kilometre radius and they'll go round and round in a circle, and that'll be their food chain. And as I said earlier, we have 78 species in Australia, but we have 22 here. I think you guys might have a couple more. I'm not sure. All right, how can you help? It's the back garden. This is Riverheads. Gentleman, he bought the poles and he's put 2 on there and 1 on there. And he's going to buy a couple more at a later date, and he's going to put 2 on there and try and increase them. He's had microbats in here, but they only stayed for a day or 2 days. Again, food chain. So there wasn't a great deal in the area. That area we know is quite poor. All right. So we're going to try and explain to you how you can help to change that. Oops. All right, boxes. How do we know that the box that we're using is the correct box? We don't. We assume it's right. We know that it will work. Does it work for all of the microbats or just a few of the species? This is the unknown. So what I'm going to do is get you guys to have a look at what we've done and see if you can either fine tune it or come up with a better box. So our box is too short, they're too long, they're not long enough. Is the colour right? Should we change the colour? Should we have a military type colour on them? What should we have? The unknown. Nobody knows. There's a man at New England University, John Smith, he did a big course for 5 years through Europe and in Australia. He came back and he said, any box is better than no box at all, but some boxes are better than others. And this is the bit that we don't know. So, how do we define a good box from a bad box? That's a bad box. They're good boxes. So how do we know that that's a bad box? It's got a motive on it. And that motive says, I'm a bat, keep out. Mother Nature doesn't steal from one to the other. So if the bat thinks that there's a bat there, it won't go near it. So don't put motives on your box. If we have a look at the timbers, they're a man-made timber. They're laminated. They've got glues in them. And they're not good. They're a killer. Look. Oh, what happened? Wrong way. All right. There's a couple of suggestions. Should we change our boxes and have something like that? Is that a good idea or a bad idea? Well, we're actually going to do this, not quite as big as what they are. We're actually going to do this. We've got enough money. We're going to go probably 3 by 3 or 4 by 4. We're going to buy one of these little children's cubby houses, and then we'll doctor it up to what we like. And we're going to pop it on the farm. And we're going to put it about 150 to 200 metres away from the microbat boxes that we've got now. So we're going to test the waters and just see which ones we think is the better. So our boxes or something like that. The reason that we came to this is that we get numerous calls from people that have got microbats either in their roof or their sheds or in the walls or something like that. Looking at the efficiency of our boxes, we're probably at the moment, we're probably about 3 or 4% efficient. So that says, does the microbat like it or doesn't like it? Or don't they want to live in a box? Again, we don't know. If you guys would like to bear that one in mind and come back to me in 5 years, I'd be happy for you to do that. So, do we do this? This guy had troubles, look, with koalas. So he put some metal on to stop them from climbing up there. So that's where we're going to go. All right. We'll hopefully, probably about the end of August, we should be finishing out all our accounts and stuff like that, and we'll go into them. Okay. Good box, bad box. Bad box. See this one? Look, laminated timbers is what happens with the laminated timbers. The weather gets to them, little small pieces break off, they fall on the ground, and other animals eat it. They quite like it. The glue is quite nice. It's very appealing to them, but it gets in their tummy and they can't pass it. So they consequently, they finish up with a lot of pain for probably a week or something like that, and then they die. So by putting that type of box in, we're going to kill more than what we're going to achieve. And the other issues are short span life. 2 years, maybe 3 years, depends on the amount of rain that you're going to get. All right. Lightning strikes. Lightning will hit them, and because of the glue is setting off a gas, they'll explode, and you'll get fires up in the top of the trees. Not good. Not good at all. Okay. Some of the glues emit the gases which are carcinogenic. So again, if you talk to the fire brigade, they hate them, right? Because if the fires are doing, especially like the big fires we've had in the last couple of years, the smoke can travel around in little balls like that. It can hit the fireman or firewoman, and if they get it in their chest, you're gone. It's, you know, for the rest of your life you'll be coughing and sneezing, and it won't do you any good. Okay. Now, how can you help? What can you do? There's a huge amount that you can do. So, the main thing with microbat is food chain. If we don't have food chain, we're not going to get microbats. So, you can go and you can pick these guys, and most of your herbs and most of your weeds were the first things on earth. They were there before anything else. Everything else evolved around them. So, why has Europe got more microbats than what we have? We asked that question. And we looked at that to say, well, why have they? So the answer that we came up with was, if anybody's been to Europe and you look at all of their farms, all of the paddocks have got lots of flowers in them. So it doesn't matter where you go, what country, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Yugoslavia, whatever. They've all got lots of flowers, and the cows eat that. That's all part of their maturity and part of making their milk. So we don't have that. We can have a look out here now, and we're lucky to see a flower. So what can we do? Go to the nursery or ring up the seed guys, look to see what you need in this area, because remember, some of these in this area are fantastic, but if I take them up to Harvey Bay, they can become a weed. So each area there will be a different type of flower that you could put in. The majority of what we've got here, you can. So instead of just going out, putting microbat boxes out, have a look at your microbat boxes, have a look where they are, and say, can I improve that food chain? Because your trees out there are only going to flower in the winter, and then come summer they're not. So most of these are for 4 seasons. So go to your seed man and ask him for a half a kilo or a kilo or whatever you want. And if you can't afford it, give me a ring and I'll give you the money. All right? I'm quite happy to do that, truly. Yeah. All right? It's all we want to do is to promote it. The little essence that we've got with this is that if I went and bought a nice brand new car and I parked it in the driveway and I didn't put any petrol in it, how good is it? It's not, is it? So if I put a microbat box in and there's no food, how good's the microbat box? Are we going to run the box down? Are we going to run the microbats down? Or are we going to run the food down? So it's a system. So we're not just putting the microbat box on a pole, in the ground, or on a tree. We've got to create that system that goes with it. And this is how we can do it. So the more flowers that we can put in, the more chance that we're going to get microbats and get them to stay in that area. So if we go back 10 years ago, before the drought, all of the microbats were out in the bush. There was very, very little in the cities. Then we started with the drought. The drought started to come, and the trees started to not produce pollen. And the only way that a tree makes pollen is with moisture. It sucks the moisture up, puts it up, it's got plenty of moisture, makes pollen, the birds and the bees come along and they eat that. That produces the tree. He puts out a nice big leaf, which takes in our carbon and puts out oxygen. So if we don't get that, we're in trouble. 60 years and we're gone. And there's no way that we can change that. You can change that by putting these in. So by putting these in, putting your boxes in at the side, they'll come out, they'll feed, and they'll go back in your boxes, and they'll start to breed. The females will gorge on this because there'll be huge amounts of pollen. So coming back to your drought, the drought stopped it and the bush shut down basically. We had all sorts of problems. But your cities were still booming. We were still getting lots of new homes being built, people going to Bunnings and other places buying lots and lots of flowers, putting them in and watering them. As soon as you water, you're going to get bugs of all denominations. So that's where the cities are. The cities at the moment are still carrying more microbats than what the bush is. So the only way that we can help the microbat is with that. All right, easy. When you know how. All right, now something for you guys to look at a later date. If you're going to put microbats in, you're going to get megabats. I'm going to tell you about megabats shortly. And you might even look at veterinary science. Go back to your university and ask them if they want to do something. And you get quite a bit of roadkill here. And you could automatically do a nice veterinary science lab here. So this is one of many. And the lady that, if you want to talk to her, she's down over the other side at Noosa, Rachel Lyons. Rachel's been around for, I don't know, I've been working with her now for probably 22 years, so she was there before me. She's a great girl, and she's doing koalas actually at the moment, but I'm not too sure who. Does anybody know Rachel? Yeah, you know Rachel? Yeah, she's a great girl.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you ask her to help you, she'll give you your heart. She will, I'll tell you that now. So give that some consideration, look at veterinary science, so that you can bring your babies and whatever else in, and you can keep them in your coop. All right, echolocation, big subject. All right, I've got one here. There they are. They're quite difficult to use. They're not easy. It's $2,000 worth. All right. So we can, which we're going to do tonight. If anybody would like to come, you're more than welcome to come. We're going to go and do a count tonight. So we're going to visually count, and we can say we've got 2, 10, or we've got none. But I can't tell you the species. With this guy, I can. All right. It works on decibels. And each microbat has a different decibel. So we look at that, we plug this into our computer, and it tells us what decibels, and we do it 3 times. If we get the same thing 3 times, it should happen. And while I've got this in my hand, I've just donated this to Ziggy and to the other young lady. Where is she? This is the other man. Queen Man Trust. All right. Thank you, John. All right, you're welcome. Yeah, as I say, they're not easy to use, but you can't do microbats without this. But you can tune this to frogs. If somebody wants to go and do frogs, you can tune this to frogs. All right. Any questions on that?
Does it just, like, is that a picture of like how you count how many,
No.
species
No, if you count, you visually count. You count. We'll be going out tonight, probably about 5:30. I think that's your sunset.
Yep.
Something like that. When you get that aura that comes across the sky, you look to the west, and then you'll see them. You've probably got about half an hour, and then it's too dark, and you're not going to see them. So you have clickers. You know the clickers.
Yeah.
So you have 2 people. All right. Doesn't matter if he counts 10 and you count 12. You put the 2 together, and you divide by 2. So you just get an average. But if you do that every month, it'll tell you the story, And that's when you bring this guy in, and it will tell you the species. You could have 10 of the same species, but then you might have 10 different species, and that's going to take you 3 or 4 days to find them. That's where that comes in. You'll see, not easy, it's difficult. The young lady, I can't remember, she's quite confident with the with these. Did you do a course on them, or
No, no,
you just picked it up?
we're gonna learn how to do it.
Yeah,
Not there
yeah,
yet, we're gonna learn.
yeah. They're not.
It's not easy, really.
They're not easy. No, they're quite difficult. It's there's a little book that goes with that. There's a book that goes. Yeah. It's let me see if I can quickly find you. There they are. That's what we look at. All right. So when I get this and I put it onto the screen will give me the decibels. So I look on the decibels and it says number 42, and there's 3 bats that have got the same. So I need to do this 3 times to define whether it's the same or not, and I can still be wrong. So there's televisions that get involved, there's aeroplanes get involved. These people have got these fancy things in their cars now, GPSs and things, and they change the channels. That could click over to you. You think you've got it, but you know it's not necessarily correct. You really do. It's quite a big thing, you know. Basically, it'll tell you, but you don't know if you're right or wrong, you know. That's why I use it. as long as I've got a microbat, that does me. But if you're going to do a complete study, no, you need a little bit more. All right? Histoplasmosis. Who knows about histo? 1, 2. All right, guys, you're all dead. No, histo won't kill you. All right, it'll make you very sick. It comes from the guano. You normally get it in a lot of caves, and you can get it in compost. Bunnings sell it by the bag. If you read the back of Bunnings, it says keep moist. That is to keep the dust down from the compost. Your rats, your mice, and your birds defecate inside, and when it dries hard and goes into a very fine powder, and you can actually it gets in your chest. And if it gets in your chest, you'll finish up with a bit of a and you'll say, oh, I've got a cold. You probably haven't. It's probably the histo that's done it. All right. I say if you've got chest problems, go and see your doctor straight away and say that you've been mucking around with bats, and then he'll know what to give you. All right. It'll only give you a tonic, and it'll just clean your airways and whatever. I think we've only ever had one person die from it. That was probably about 50 odd years ago. So it's not a killer, but be aware of histo. You can Google it. Google histo. There we go. We've lost one again. All right. Just read the 3. That's the differences between your microbats and your megabats. So the big thing we want to look at is that one, look. They're your pollinators, the world's greatest pollinator. How good's that? That's the American farmer, right? So that's how he keeps his pollution down. He encourages the microbats. You'll find, I had a professor here from America a couple of years ago. He was just amazed at what we were doing. He could not believe what we were doing. So he photographed a lot of the stuff that we were doing, and he took our boxes and how we did it and the rest of it. He took it back to America, and he had a young lady with him. She's since got married. She's now in UK, and she's doing the same thing in UK. She was with me for about 2 weeks, and she couldn't believe what we were doing and how good we were doing it. So, and they're the sort of figures that we can get. We don't have that, right? There's no way in the world that we have that figure. You guys can get that, or get some of it, All right, so be wary. All right. Now, your tubes and your boxes. I thought somebody would have asked me a question, but you haven't. Why do we use the tubes and why do we use the boxes? Okay, two different things. In some areas, the tubes are far superior to what the boxes are, and then in other areas, the boxes are superior. And the reason for that is because of these guys. These are they're about 5, 6 years old now, and this is up at Gingin. Do you know Mount Perry? Right? This is the tunnel up in Mount Perry. There's about 15,000 up there. Most of them are eastern bentwing, but they're your moitas. There's two little groups of about 20 or 30 moitas that, and again, you'll find that some of your microbats will actually amalgamate with others for friendship and for safety situations, and that's what happens here. So with the tubes is what we had. We were doing. We were up there for I don't know about 6 months, and we were getting 2 temperatures from here, and we couldn't work out why we were getting that. So we sent the information to Melbourne to Professor Marie Kerr, and she came back to me. She said, "Well, we're not sure, John. We don't know." And then we're going to go and find out. So she came back to me about 6 months later. She said, "We're not sure, but we think it's the female, when she's either copulating or she's pregnant or she's had the baby, she likes high humidity. She will make her own humidity up to around 90–95%, which is a little bit unusual. She likes that. And you'll see here, there's the babies. So when she's finished with the baby, she'll take the baby up there into the creche, and she keeps them up there. There's the male. The male is there, and he'll flap his wings, and he'll take the bad air down, and he'll push clean air up, and he'll make a big circle and keep the air fresh for him. And up here, you'll get minimum of 100% humidity. So we looked at that, and we said, well, how can we sort of duplicate that? So we duplicated it with a couple of tubes. The first ones didn't work too well, but the ones that we've got now are doing a lot better. So with your plastic, the humidity will stay in there, and it will maintain that humidity. In your boxes, the humidity will absorb into the timber, dissipate through the top. So some are good, some are no good. Again, you guys can help us with that. So if you get microbat boxes or tubes, put them in your house or your garden, whatever, monitor them and just see which ones are coming up the best. So, any questions on that? That's fascinating. That we did that for Bundaberg Council. So very good. 15,000 in there. All right, there's your echolocation. Okay, echolocation is not just microbats. Here's your echolocation. Look, all of your mammals, they will echolocate of some sort. If you really want to look at echolocation, go to the Blind Society and watch the blind people. They have got it to a perfection. You'll see them in the street. They walk up to a post and then you say, "How do you do that?" He's got that, and he sends out a sonar sound. Only a few feet from him, he's perfected that, and that will actually hit something, and then he'll stop and he'll either move backwards or sideways, or he'll know. So and your other animals, most of your animals as you see there, they do the echolocation. So what happens is, there's your bat. He sends out the sonar, comes in, hits the mosquito, and that comes back. That all happens in about 200th of a second. So it goes boom, boom, and he knows then, and then he'll chase whatever it is that he's chasing, and he'll go for it. Okay, where's our biggest problem? It's costing the world hundreds and hundreds of trillions of dollars. Is the mosquito. And if you have a look down here, there's the problem, look. These are diseases. With the climate change, your mosquito is coming down. Not last year, but the year before, Harvey Bay had 3,000 hits of dengue fever. Never had that before. Brisbane had got 600. Never had that before. Brisbane, normally, people go on holiday, they go up north, they get bitten by a mosquito, they come back home, they've got dengue fever. They were getting it directly from the city. People had said to them, I've been on holiday. So they got dengue fever. Where did they get it from? The mosquito. So there's your mosquito. What's the main food chain for the microbat? Mosquito. So the more mozzies we got, the more microbats we can have. Right? Viruses. Right? First person who can find the microbat on there or the megabat gets $50. Got it? So it's propaganda. It's not there. These are the world figures. So there's no bats on there. The last bat that we got that killed somebody was about 8 years ago, and that was in Rockhampton. And that was a vat because he didn't put gloves on. So self-inflicted. So in the last 500 years, we haven't had a bat that's killed anybody. Only one boy. And that was in Rockhampton about 8 years ago. And we're still investigating that. We always thought that whatever disease that we've got, when we die, it automatically goes. It didn't happen. The bat that this guy picked up, he was out playing with his mates and he's walking home through a park and he saw the skeleton. He picked it up and he scratched him. So he went home. He never said anything to Mum, like boys don't. They get scratched every day, all day. 2 years later, he died. So we then had to follow the chain back and we actually found out where it came from. And we found it in the park. And CSIRO have got that and they tested it. And we thought that the bat would automatically lose the dengue, Lycia virus. And it didn't. It's still there. So they're still checking it. And they still don't have good answers there. There's a couple of answers, but they're not particularly good. So here's your mosquito, look. Right? That's the one we've got to worry about. We don't have them, but that's what happens in the world. We could import a few. So look at your jellyfish. And the big domestic one that we have, look, is your horses. Look at your cattle. But there's no bats. So when it comes up in the newspaper and we get the full page and we get the bats flying in and doing all sorts, and then underneath it says Dracula will be on your TV tonight at 9 o'clock. Propaganda. Don't believe it. Alright? They won't hurt you. Alright, these are your megabats. Why do they drink? We're not too sure, we don't know. But they do. It was just two shots that I thought I'd put in just to give you a little bit of information on megabats. And we see them. We have 8 species. They're called Peroptus. Alright, there's 8 species in the world actually. We have 3 here in Queensland. We have the grey, the black and the red. The grey is more New South Wales and the cooler areas. We do have one crowd in Harvey Bay. There are only about 100 of them, and then there's another lot which are further up, way up between Cairns and Rocky. There's about 300-400 up in that group. They're pollinators, but they're fruit eaters. That's the grey-headed, which is this one. Your black is purely and solely fruit. That's where the complaints come from. You won't get too many of them. You can see them of a night time. The blacks are the ones that are normally just above the tree line. They don't go very, very far, probably 10, 15 k's, and that's about it. The greys are the same, they won't go much more than that. But the little reds, they normally come in families of 10 and 20,000. And that's where you see the big crowds when they come in. They're normally up north. They're purely and solely pollinators. They don't do anything else except pollinate. So they will eat fruit. So they'll come from Cairns and they're on their way down now. We'll get them somewhere around December. Then they'll go down towards the border. When it gets too cold down there, they turn around. And by that time, the fruit on the trees should have been made. It should be nice, good, juicy fruits. And they'll eat the fruit and then they eat the seed. And you've heard that they make the new forest because they excrete the seed. But it's what happens there, when we put seeds in the ground, we stand there and water. Most people don't know why they do that, so the man next door does it, and he's got a good garden, so if I do it, I'll have a garden like his. But it's not quite the case. You need a germination. And all seeds, irrespective of the size or shape, need 70% of their own weight in water, and then they will actually trigger a mechanism and you'll get something that comes out of the ground. These guys don't do that. They eat that seed, it stays in their stomach, and it's an acid. And that acid germinates the seed. Then they excrete that, and that hits the forest floor. A leaf normally comes over the top of that, and it can sit there anything up to 30, 40, 50 years. When the trees that are around it start to get old and decapitated, they lose their leaves. That means the sunshine starts to come in, more rain starts to come in. There's your trigger mechanism, and then once that happens, they will start to come up. So next time you walk in the forest, you see a tree this high, he's waiting for these trees on either side to drop their leaves, and he will replace them in probably 50 or 60 years' time. So there's your new forest, all right? So that's how good these guys are. So if we don't have them, we won't get new forest. All right? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. That's Harvey Bay. That's an average of a night, all right? When we see that, we love it. And do you know why we love it? They're here, they're food orientated. So that says our forests are in good condition. So if you see anything like that on your forests, you know your forests are in good condition, blow them a kiss. All right? Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day. Any questions?
Stand with the silence.
Yes. Yes, sir.
You go.
You sure?
Yes, absolutely.
So if you were sort of assessing a site like Hidden Vale,
Yep.
and you were going to make some decisions about where to put the bat boxes,
Yep.
what are your criteria and how confident are you that you're putting them in the best place?
With this area, we're extremely confident for the simple reason it was a dairy farm at one stage, and we know there's lots of bugs and biters here. And when we look to actually put them in, and these guys have already put new plantings in, we like to get in when they're only that high. The earlier we get in, the better it is for us. But it doesn't matter, you can go into old growth. So when you look at old growth, you look at mozzies and you see that in your house, you open your front door or your back door, and you'll see the midges flying round and round and round and round. They're getting oxygen, that's their build-up, that's what they're living on. There's particles in that air, which is the carbon, which is what they want to eat. So that's where they are. So when we're in the forest, we've probably got 1,000 different bugs and biters that are in there. They won't fly in the trees because the leaves get in their way, so they fly in the gaps of the trees. So if we look at the trees, and we've got a tree there and a tree there, look, and I've got a gap in the middle. So I would go in then, and I would put a box here. So that gives them a free run to get the bugs and biters. If a predator comes in or the wind comes up, they can duck in and they're quite safe. So that's your easy way. Other than that, you just drill holes and put them in the ground and hope for the best. All right, which most people do anyway. You know, some work, some don't. You know, yes, sir.
Do you know what the thermal properties are inside the bat boxes and how that relates to whether they like them or not?
Yeah, we're still working on that. We don't. Your plastic, as I say, the females love that 95%.
Yeah.
They love it. Your timber, when we put that in, some of it twists and turns and it shrinks. There's always little gaps, so a lot of the heat goes out. But they still like that. So we think that it doesn't really matter how good the temperature is, as long as it suits what species that like it. And that's the bit that we don't know. You know, which species actually prefer the timber or the plastic. Now, having said that, UK are using, it's like a fibro, what they use for their chimneys, same as what our water pipe is, but it's fibro they use for their chimneys. And I sent that over to Exeter University, and they're manufacturing from our plastic, and they reckon they're working a dream. So temperature, I don't know that it's a problem. I think like there are situations there, but we don't know about that, not yet. And that's we would like to know that.
You know, what's been quite interesting, Robbie, is the combination of boxes and tubes and different types of designs, and that obviously gives variety, diversity.
Yeah.
She's too hot in there, she'll go to that one. You know, she's got different.
The other thing, which is what you guys can do, and come back to me in 5 years, is find something that you can actually put in that box that will GPS back to, or Google back to you what the temperatures are. You know, we don't have the money to do that, but if you've got the university or somebody like that with some big dollars, you know.
Yeah, because there are these little iButton loggers.
Yeah.
That you can pop in them.
Yeah,
I've
that's
got lots
right.
of colleagues that have worked on looking at the temperature in the environment, how it would affect things like lizards.
That's right.
And you stick them in like little models, and you can make little models of bats, stick them up inside there, and just see what the various temperature is.
We did that at Gladstone there with Luke. It'd be about 7 or 8 years ago now, and there was 3 poles, and we put 6 boxes up, and they all got green frogs. Now we know that green frogs prefer the ground with the cool, and they can duck in under the leaf or the water or whatever they want. They filled all our boxes up. We never got a bat in them. So they, for some reason, automatically changed and went into the wooden box, sitting up in the box. It was middle of nowhere. It was waterboard country. They just cleared it, and we wanted to know what microbats that we got in the area, and that just didn't work. You know, the frogs did. So, but that told us something that we didn't know, that the green frogs didn't have habitat. So they went back with the waterboard and they put lengths of pipe and they just dug them all over the place, and the frogs are now in there. So one bad thing led to one good thing. So just because you've got one problem, you may be able to roll that over, you know. So, can't help it, sorry. Yes?
Is there like a certain number that can fit in each one? Like is it
No.
maximum capacity?
It's the most, the problem is, especially what we've got here, we've got 3 sorts of bats. We've got grass bat, we've got forest bat, we've got cave bat. Your cave bats are your big ones, okay? They're probably about 8-10 grand, all right? The forest bat and your grass bat, they're probably 3 to 4. You may get 1 at 5, but that's about it. So they're the ones that stay, they're the ones that eat the mosquitoes. But no, you can't differentiate, or we can't at this stage. We see there's a million questions that we can't answer. You know, we just don't know, because we've never done it. A lot of the European and the American stuff is different because they have colder climates. See, the worst that we get is probably -4, -5. They're looking at -30, 50, and a little bit more. So as I showed you initially, they're all over the world except for Antarctica, because that gets 2 minus. That's the only place that they're not, but they're everywhere else. But temperatures, funny thing. Yeah, can't answer that. Yeah.
Well, thank you, John.
All right.
Fascinating.
Diggy, you're welcome.
We're going to go and plant some bat boxes on poles just outside
Is that
the fence.
It is.
That's the time.
Yeah. Oh.
So anyone who wants to learn, Nick, if you want to come and see how we did it,
Right.
come join in.
Now's the time.
Now's the time to learn how to do it. You can do it at home. You get boxes from John, apparently. You need them.
Yeah, George, just give me a ring.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, we're going to go here.